the flyer says 50 Cuyahoga County judges exposed to the FBI in a multi-million-dollar county crippling insurance fraud scam or scandal or swindling situation which the citizens of Cuyahoga County and the city of Cleveland actually are financing. So that's what my discussion group is going to be about today. That's what the presentation is going to cover in terms of revealing those 50 judges' involvement that I also mentioned in my autobiography called 360 Degrees of Shame, Blame, and Pain for Profit. And so I like to start this presentation right now. Hello, my name is Ralph Watts Jr. As a native Clevelander of 53 years, I'm a first-time author and self-publisher of my autobiography, and it's titled 360 Degrees of Shame, Blame, and Pain for Profit. Its subtitle is From the Gavel on the Stick to the Pulpit, Cuyahoga County, Cleveland's Untold Story of Corruption and Racketeering. As a Cleveland businessman, successful bail bond agent, and then owner, and finally a million-dollar entrepreneur, the rewards were fast and limitless, which made both for a perfect success story. Furthermore, so I thought. However, as a politically unaffiliated Clevelander, and both Cuyahoga County and the state of Ohio, elected and appointed politicians soon began to use their dishonest political connections within the Justice Center judges' chambers and the sheriff department to target those financial rewards through their web of ruthless, corrupt politics. Later turned, and I quote, a county in crisis, end of quote, by the Cleveland Plain Dealer reports. Those same politicians eventually employed various pay-to-play gambits and blackmailing employees initiated by the sheriffs and the county and city clerk of courts to inhibit and neutralize my success. In the preface of my autobiography, attorney Timothy Koherski, one of 5 lawyers representing me throughout these battles, documented these sets of corporate corruption within this quote. The situation with Ralph Watts and the Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Office has, through the efforts and through the prompting, cajoling, as well as the insistence of competing bail bond agents, that there is an atmosphere, and get this, of let's put Ralph out of business. As he continued, he mentions, attorney Timothy Koherski, the tactics and efforts of those involved. While I noticed that the attorney was careful not to mention presiding and administrative judge Richard McMonagle's name as the ringleader and other judges, elected officials, including the clerk of courts, he continues, as he mentions, have sharpened in the recent months. Why? Simple. Ralph has been singled out by the Ohio Department of Insurance and the Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Department, and he further mentions this, which I must mention was led by felony indicted convicted Sheriff Gerald McFall and Judge McMonagle's henchmen. Actually, the attorney didn't mention, but I thought you should know that. Then again, the attorney mentions why Ralph? Simple again, greed. The other agents want Ralph out of business so they can get more business. Additionally, there's strength in numbers. They get rid of Ralph now and then someone else later. Close quotes. These political figures led by Judge Richard McMonagle eventually succeeded in backing me into a corner, after which they violated me emotionally, socially, spiritually, for achieving such success in what I thought was supposed to be the free marketplace of the insurance industry. Judicial and regulatory racketeering and injustices oversaw by ruthless judges, led by a corrupt sheriff and the sheriff department, embraced by the Ohio Department of Insurance administrators and Cuyahoga County, and covered up by administratively employed clerk's office. These issues were once shared with the leaders of the church, which were ignored, which are the nature of the challenge that opposed me continuously as an unaffiliated entrepreneur. Those challenges combined eventually destroyed my million-dollar bail bond business. However, the illicit and immoral conduct of those politicians now are irrefutably documented and supported through Chronicle news accounts, interviews, and legal briefs that confirm the truthfulness of those criminal experiences engaged in by those politicians from 1996 through 2009, which continue to this very day. You can read about them within the 846 pages and 86 chapters of my autobiography because of the combination of those crimes committed by unconscionably ruthless politicians and judges in Cuyahoga County. And I'd like to stop there in terms of the judge issue in Cuyahoga County. As you're probably aware, we have a judge, actually several judges. One of them is Judge Bridget McCafferty, who's being prosecuted by the FBI for allegedly lying to the FBI, and get this, fixing court cases along with crimes associated with corruption and racketeering. I have here 6 pages of documents whereby it's been headlined in the newspaper with Judge Bridget McCafferty on no less than, I would say, 12 headline articles are in the Cleveland Plain Dealer where she's presently being tried for corruption-related charges, racketeering, and fixing court cases. But I have you to know she's not being tried by herself. There are over 50 Cuyahoga County officials that are presently been convicted, if not convicted, have been indicted, as well as waiting their court cases for corruption and racketeering as well. So this should not become, this should not be something that you find shocking and unbelievable, because it's going on every day here in Cuyahoga County. Furthermore, as I continue, because of the combination of those crimes committed by unconscionably ruthless politicians and judges in Cuyahoga County, I decided that it was my social, moral, and civic duty to convene today's community grassroots discussion forum, and at the conclusion of it, a call to action will be discussed. However, as I continue the forum, during this forum I will expose those involved in this enterprise of corruption and the nature of those crimes committed by them against you, the taxpayers and citizens of Cuyahoga County. Why? They total millions of dollars, which you, the same community, are financing. They include, but not limited to, these 4 political, elected, and appointed officials that are involved. 1, 50 judges, namely presiding and administrative judge Richard McMonaco, who was and is the ringleader. 2, the Ohio Department of Insurance. 3, the Sheriff Department, specifically felony indicted and convicted 2-time swindler, as well as solicitor, who was convicted of soliciting money from his employees while he was in uniform and convicted of those charges, Chief Sheriff Gerald McFall. And 4, the clerk of courts, both the city, Cleveland Municipal Clerk of Courts, as well as the Cuyahoga County Clerk of Courts and their administrators. And the lawlessness, judicial treason, corruption, and racketeering they purposefully engaged in that contributed to labeling this county, and I quote, a county in crisis, end of quote. These documented crimes, which the Cuyahoga County Clerk of Courts recorded, journalized, and timestamped, are labeled, or were labeled, in terms of these case numbers, and you may want to write this down. Case number CV 06591302, as well as case number CV 528068, were both, and I want to emphasize, brought to the attention of, yes, Chief Prosecutor Bill Mason. As early as 2004, Bill Mason was aware of the corruption that Judge Richard McMonaco was engaged in, not just this Bridget McCafferty, who's presently being brought up by the FBI for lying and allegedly fixing cases and corruption and racketeering. The Chief Prosecutor, Bill Mason, was made aware that corruption existed amongst these entities of politically elected as well as appointed officials as early as 2004, as well as he was made aware again in 2006. Although this enterprise of corruption were engaged in to benefit the bail bond underwriter insurance carriers, who are those public officials' constituents that include judges, the Ohio Department of Insurance, the Sheriff Department, and both clerk of courts. They are nothing less than crimes against both humanity and the citizens of Cuyahoga County. More specifically, the truthful nature of those crimes have been disclosed in great detail in the following chapters of my autobiography, 360 Degrees of Shame, Blame, and Pain for Profit. I've labeled those specific criminal acts and conducts that they've engaged in. I believe there's 18 numerical issues, and you may want to take a pencil out or a pen to document, or later on in our discussion, what these issues are, and we can discuss them. The first one is corruption. You'll find that in chapters 5, 40, and 41. The second issue in terms of criminal behavior that they've engaged in is racketeering. You'll find that in chapters 11, 12, 14, and 18. The third issue that these judges, the Ohio Department of Insurance, the Sheriff's Department, and both clerk's office have engaged in is insurance fraud. You'll find that in chapters 17 through 21, as well as 74. The fourth criminal act that they've engaged in is perpetuating loan sharking, credit fraud, and home foreclosures. You'll find that in chapters 82 and 83. The fifth issue is securing illegal contracts for organized criminals. You'll find that in chapter 81. The sixth issue that you'll find in my autobiography that they engaged, the criminal issue that they engaged in, is shifting. Yes, shifting public tax funds to private insurers. You'll find that in chapter 18. The seventh issue, criminal issue that they've engaged in or aided and abetted in was co-signing, aiding and abetting unlicensed bail bond insurances, as well specifically regarding Chuck Brown Bail Bond Agency from 2007 to 2010. And you can write this down. That contact link is on Google. And the contact link on Google is as follows, and I quote, "The Ohio Department of Insurance revokes the license of Shaker Heights bail bondsman and his company." The eighth criminal issue that they've engaged in is securing illegal contracts for unlicensed agencies through bankers and American Reliable surety underwriter bail bond insurance carriers for both Chuck Brown and other agencies as well. The ninth issue that these public, elected, and appointed officials has engaged in includes embracing and protecting corrupt bail bond agents. You'll find that as well in chapter 81. The 10th issue that they've engaged in, criminal issue, is money laundering. The 11th issue that they've engaged in, criminal issue that they've engaged in, is creating fraudulent laws to pursue and benefit from corruption. You'll find that in chapter 5, 19 through 21, 48, 55 through 57, 60 through 63, as well as chapter 81. Through both, you may ask, how did they do that? They did that and continue to do that through both Chuck Brown House Bill 730, you'll find that in chapters 20, as well as 48, and the presiding administrative judge, Richard McMonagle, and his cohort, Sheriff Gerald McFall, fraudulent soliciting law. And I mind you, Sheriff Gerald McFall was indicted and convicted of soliciting while in uniform employees and others that was under his supervision while that money was allegedly funneled to judges. And here we have a judge today, Bridget McCafferty, that's actually been charged in the U.S. court by the FBI for allegedly fixing court cases as well as engaging in related activities to racketeering as well as corruption. So, in terms of Richard McMonagle and his cohort, Sheriff Gerald McFall's fraudulent soliciting law, a law which the sheriff himself was convicted and found guilty of violating, You again can reference case number CV06-59132 as well as CV04-528068. The 12th issue criminal act that they've engaged in terms of aiding and abetting and facilitating these crimes are employing criminals, yes, criminals, repeated kidnappers, abductors, and felonious assault bail bond agents that were what? Licensed and protected as they engaged in those criminal acts by the Ohio Department of Insurance and their insurance providers to commit those crimes against the public while soliciting fraudulent bail bond policies to the taxpayers and targeting my business, family, and insurance agency to fraudulently revoke my license. You'll find those truthful issues in my autobiography in chapters 63, 64, 67 through 71, 67 through 77, 78D, and 81 through 84. Previously, I should have said it was 67 through 71. The 13th criminal issue that these four public elected as well as appointed entities of our government engaged in, actually the 13th one is embracing and protecting a corrupt sheriff, Chief Sheriff Gerald McFall, and his conduct and other sheriffs up under him. You'll find that in chapters 72 through 75. The 14th criminal issue that they've aided and abetted as well as engaged in, freeing, get this, here's the big one, freeing, and I quote, felons for profit, yes, freeing, and I quote, felons for profit, end of quote, to benefit insurance constituencies profits and their state-regulated financial build-up account reserves. You'll find that in chapter 50. 15, endangering citizens. 16, willfully creating conditions, and get this, you may want to write this one down and grab your seat so you don't fall out of it. 16, willfully creating conditions, serial murderer Anthony Sowell murderous crimes of 11, count them, 11 black women. You'll find that in chapters 49 through 54. Specifically in chapter 50, they created willfully those conditions. 17, 5 lawyers through various motions and legal briefs notified judges of freeing, and this I want to emphasize, notified judges of freeing, and I quote, felons for profit practice, end of quote, which were repeatedly ignored. You'll find those issues, truthful issues, in chapters 40, 65, 76, 81, and 84. Those lawyers included, but were not limited to, Attorney Timothy J. Kaharski, Attorney David Grant, Attorney Paul M. Friedman, Attorney James Willis, and Mark McLean involving unconstitutional crimes committed against me. 18, and lastly, I would be remiss if I failed to disclose prominent black preachers such as Bishop Delano Ellis of the Pentecostal Church of Christ and Pastor A.F. Caver, formerly of Harvest Missionary Baptist Church. Indiscretions and illicit antics, both were equally destructive in terms of adversely affecting my family, my business, and the community which they pretentiously and hypocritically serve. However, Pastor Caver is serving 15 years in the penitentiary. You'll find that in chapters 27, 42 through 46, 60 through 61, 69 B and C, 78 B and C, as well as chapter 80. Each of which, totaling 18, are crimes against both humanity and the citizens of Cuyahoga County, which this enterprise, make no mistake about it, it's an enterprise of corporate corruption. This enterprise of corruption, specifically judges, were engaged in to benefit the bail bond underwriter insurance carriers industries regarding millions, if not billions of dollars in lost taxpayer and county treasury revenues as well as reserves. Finally, chapter 45 is titled, and I quote, One pastor wants money, and the other wants blood, guts, and money. That's referencing the issues of Bishop Delano Ellis of the United Pentecostal Church of Christ, which explains Bishop Ellis's request for me, and hear this, his request for me to physically harm one of his enemies. Moreover, understand that when you lay down with dogs, you're bound to get up with fleas. And while these 50 judges, and you must understand, judges do engage in criminal conduct. We have Bridget McCafferty, again, that's alleged to have lied to the FBI and is now in the U.S. court being prosecuted for fixing cases, allegedly, as well as engaging in activities related to corruption and racketeering. And as I said, while those 50 judges, and by the way, there's another judge named Timothy, I can't think of his name, but she's in the county of 50 other county officials that have been either indicted, convicted, or presently waiting to be prosecuted by the U.S. district courts as well. Again, while these 50 judges representing the judicial system within Cuyahoga County and the Justice Center, and felony indicted and convicted Sheriff Gerald McFall representing the county law enforcement, and the Ohio Department of Insurance representing the regulatory oversight assurance branch of government, and the state of Ohio, who are in bed with the bail bond insurance industry's insurance surety underwriter carriers, it's the taxpayers that are stuck with the pest control bills for corruption, money laundering, racketeering, and killers whom they have allowed to roam free. Mass serial murderer Anthony Sowell is one of those killers that roam free because of their greed, lawlessness, and I must emphasize, I must say, Attorney Timothy Koherski forewarned and documented these issues to whatever extent, as well as their total disregard to serve and protect Cuyahoga County and Cleveland citizens. That's found in chapter 83 on page 790 through 793. I am, as well as the citizens that have been affected by these criminal acts engaged by these 4, if not more, public and elected branches of government in need of lawyers to pursue those crimes against the people, the citizens of Cuyahoga County, of Cleveland, Ohio, and myself, to hold those and others involved accountable for these acts of corruption, insurance fraud, and other crimes. Furthermore, and you may want to write this down, I've disclosed the nature of those crimes to the FBI in 2005, as well as to the Chief Prosecutor Bill Mason in 2004. Twice I disclosed it to the FBI in 2010, and once in 2011 to the Cuyahoga County Executive, yes, Ed Fitzgerald, as well as to Attorney General Mike DeWine, and to Governor John Kasich, and to the U.S. State Representative Congressional Office of the Honorable Congresswoman Marsha L. Fudge in a letter. The letter was titled Judicial Corruption, Racketeering, Insurance Fraud, and Tax Evasion. Documentation provided for congressional and federal investigation. And that letter that they received was titled as follows: Monday, February the 24th of 2011, to the Office of Clerk of Courts, in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act, to Gerald E. First, Clerk of Courts, and or Director Mark K. Lime of the Cuyahoga County Clerk of Courts, I, Ralph Watts Jr., am requesting the case numbers of each bail bond executed in Cuyahoga County Clerk of Courts office be made available to me, if permitted by law in writing, that the bail bond offices of Chuck Brown and or his agents, whereby his surety underwriters, insurance carriers, provided bond powers or checks that were used as a means to post those bonds from 2007 to 2010. Now you may ask, why did I request that information? Here's the bombshell, and it's coming. This information will be provided to the FBI and Congress for the purposes of attempting to initiate a congressional, if not a federal investigation into those and other relevant matters and the individuals elected and or appointed county, state, judicial, and regulatory government entities that were party to those and other bail bond matters. This is in reference to a reported news article, and I quote, "Ohio Department of Insurance revokes the licenses of Shaker Heights bail bondsman and his company," close quote, which described Chuck Brown's criminal, not illicit, criminal bail bond conduct. If, however, you require further information to provide me with the aforementioned information prior to complying with my request, I can be contacted at 216-249-3713, home, or 216-355-4258 cell, or bailclassaction@global.net. And I concluded the letter with respectfully, Ralph Weiss Jr. As the audience, you can receive a copy of this letter in its entirety by please emailing me at bailclassaction@global.net, sbcglobal.net. Upon complying with this letter's request, on January 27th of 2011, Mark Lime, the director of Cuyahoga County Clerk of Courts, provided me with 708, and I'll show them to you. He provided me with 708 case numbers, as well as I have a CD, and you can have this by emailing me. Mark Lyon provided me with 708 case numbers, and these case numbers are very important. 708 case numbers, as well as they're digitized and on a CD as well. And the significance of that, I'll continue to read. 708 case numbers. They include Chuck Brown's agency's illicit, if not criminal, written bail bonds from 2007 to 2010, which he did so under the protection and racket of Cuyahoga County Clerk of Courts, that was in connection with the Plain Dealer June 18, 2010 news article written by Sandra Livingston titled, and I quote, "The Ohio Department of Insurance revokes the license of Shaker Heights bail bondsman and his company," close quote. The article report detailed how Chuck Brown agency criminally, if not illicitly, wrote bail bonds for clients while he, and get this should knock you out of your seat, while being unchartered and unlicensed during those 3 years. In other words, those bail bond policies were fraudulent, and fraudulent insurance products not worth the paper that they were wrote on. And those 50 judges co-signed it and nevertheless allowed him to engage in insurance fraud and peddle those illegal criminal products to the public. Therefore, through Mark Lime's 708 case numbers, the Plain Dealer report, and my autobiography, the following can be concluded, including in terms of approximately 50 judges that had an opportunity to bring a stop to this criminal escapade that they allowed this bail bond agent to engage in, and insurance companies. Approximately 50 judges' involvement in his organized criminal exploits. And I numbered those criminal exploits in terms, I think there's 11 of them. Number one, 50 judges, these are all approximates. 50 judges took money from Chuck Brown and his agencies and other agencies. Number two, 50 judges required Chuck Brown to pay the court money for forfeitures or fleeing felons. Number three, 50 judges provided Chuck Brown with time to pay extensions for fleeing felons. These are all approximates. 50 judges provided Chuck Brown with remits of payments or refunds as he engaged in criminal fraudulent insurance fraudulent insurance products that the clerk of courts accepted. They provided him with remits of payments and refunds provided through the clerk of courts for fleeing felons. Number five, 50 judges conducted illicit bail bond or criminal hearings of accused felons' compliance with the terms of their bonds and release, while their bonds were uninsured through Chuck Brown, who was unchartered, and get this, unlicensed as a bail bond agency by the Ohio Secretary of State. For 3 years he did this, from 2007 to 2010. 6, several surety underwriter insurance carriers licensed by the Ohio Department of Insurance nevertheless continued to insure Chuck Brown's criminal bail bond operation. 8, subsequently, and you may ask why, the clerk of courts, both the city and the county, the sheriff's department, including felony convicted and indicted Sheriff Gerald McFall, the Ohio Department of Insurance, and 50 judges. You may ask, why did they aid and abet in this criminal enterprise of insurance fraud and racketeering? And here it is. Subsequently, if for any reason Chuck Brown failed to comply with the fiduciary court order obligation of these 50 judges who took money from him, not only would Chuck Brown agency be prevented from conducting bail bond business throughout the state of Ohio, namely within the Justice Center, but so would every other bail bond agency that was insured by the same corrupt parent surety underwriter insurance carriers. Those two specifically that come to mind is American Reliable and Bankers. Plain and simple, the law declares that if one insured agency fails to comply with their financial obligations to the court, all, and I quote, all like insured bail bond agency must suffer the same sanction of suspension until compliance has been satisfied by the original offender, and in this case, it's Chuck Brown and his entire agency that was unlicensed and unchartered. Those two agencies come to mind again, American Reliable and Bankers, his insurers, aiding and abetting him in soliciting and peddling those criminally fraudulent bail bond products from 2007 to 2010. 8, therefore, to prevent, we'll further go into why they did this, those 4 elected as well as appointed government entities, therefore, to prevent Cuyahoga County and the Ohio Department of Insurance sanctioned and protected Bail Bond Association president and the insurance carrier's newly handpicked and promoted first black general agent of numerous connected insured bail bond agencies in Cleveland, we have here Chuck Brown from being shut down and unable to conduct business in the county, and causing every other connected bail bond agency from being shut down too. And I emphasize, the very agencies and agents the Ohio Department of Insurance solely relied on to provide perjured testimony for them to defraud and railroad me of my insurance bail bond licenses in 2005. The very agents and agents. And here's how they did it, and here's why they did it. 50 judges, Cleveland Municipal and Cuyahoga County Clerk of Courts administrators, the Secretary of State, the Ohio Department of Insurance, all took money from his illicit Chuck Brown's operation to keep Chuck Brown criminal organization afloat and resuscitated until Chuck Brown stopped paying to play, particularly money supposedly owed to you and me and the taxpayers through the Secretary of State, instead of demanding his, or should I say their, criminal enterprise be shut down immediately, which you, the taxpayers, were bankrolling. 9, when resuscitation began to smell afoul of insurance fraud, defrauding the government, tampering with records, grand theft, tax evasion, and now on the federal level, such as issues that's confronting Bridget McCafferty for allegedly fixing court cases, and issues related to corruption and racketeering and lying to the FBI. When these issues begin to smell afoul of tampering with records, grand theft, and tax evasion, now on the federal level, all of them, those 50 judges, the Ohio Department of Insurance, Sheriff Gerald McFall, and both city and county clerk of courts decided to disown Chuck Brown. 10, this enterprise of corruption and racketeering represents a well-orchestrated, make no mistake about it, a well-orchestrated pattern, if not symphony, of corruption and protection racketeering for the express purposes of obtaining an illegal financial competitive advantage in the bail bond supposedly free market place. 50 judges did so in terms of engaging in this criminal orchestrated enterprise of activity, even though, and get this, Chuck Brown was unlicensed and unchartered by none other than the state of Ohio Secretary of State from 2007 to 2010, and was unassurable, but nevertheless was allowed to peddle and pass off fraudulent insurance policy through both the clerk of courts, the county, and the city, while they were co-signed by no less than 50 judges authorizing him to do so, illegally letting out criminals out of the Justice Center to roam our streets. One of those criminals I'll bring to mind that benefited from their aiding and abetting was murderous Anthony Sowell. This represents a multi-million-dollar, if not billion-dollar, insurance racket of corruption and racketeering. These judicial, regulatory, and administrative branches of government were aiding and abetting Chuck Brown in crimes, while the taxpayer was both victimized by them as well as bankrolling them. Crimes designed to send him off with a huge, when I say him, Chuck Brown off with a huge $1 million retirement chest fund. If not for him, certainly for them, which they all benefited from thanks to Chuck Brown criminal affairs. Nothing less than a full-fledged congressional investigation, and certainly an FBI investigation, should be launched against all involved. Such crimes also merit my name being cleared by the Ohio Department of Insurance that was, at the time of defrauding me of my license in 2005 under the direct influence of Chuck Brown, then as now. They fraudulently employed, protected, and encouraged members of Chuck Brown's Cuyahoga County Bail Bond Association and the insurance underwriters, agency agents of that association, most of whom he, Chuck Brown, was general agent to slander me and to provide perjured, uncooperated testimony to both the Ohio Department of Insurance as well as to Judge Richard McMonagle, supported by his corrupt regime of sheriffs as a means to revoke my license. Therefore, I deserve a full pardon of my good name made in writing. In 2005, again, I want you to know that I informed Prosecutor Bill Mason of these crimes that Judge Richard McMonagle, the presiding administrative judge, as well as the sheriff in 2005, as well as the sheriff's department, as well as both clerk of courts were engaged in these criminal activities, and the chief prosecutor, Bill Mason, refused to move on. Furthermore, in terms of informing him the nature of those corruptions involving the bail bond industry and the sheriff's department, specifically Sheriff Gerald McFarland, administrator, and presiding Judge Richard McMonagle, and get this, I notified the FBI at least, count them, 1, 2, 3 times, and nothing was done. That notice and case number is CV 06-591301, as well as CV 04-528068, which represents millions of dollars stolen from me and ruled on as such by the courts because of such protection rackets and corruption and organized crimes. Protection rackets, corruptions, fixing court cases, which Bridget McCafferty is presently in front of the U.S. federal government and being prosecuted by the FBI, fixing court cases by a judge, allegedly, lying to the FBI, as well as crimes related to racketeering and corruption. Nothing different than these 50 judges. Money which I never received. Further details into this horrific cesspool of organized corruption and racketeering are provided in greater specificity within the 846 pages and 86 chapters of my autobiography of 360 Degrees of Shame, Blame, and Pain for Profit. Here's the kicker. After notifying, yes, Congresswoman Marsha Fudge, the State Secretary of State DeWine. Our new county executive, Ed Fitzgerald, after notifying and others, including the FBI, I have yet to hear of such an investigation into these factual, this is not mythical, factual crimes by any of these notified public appointed and elected officials, including the FBI. After contacting Oprah Winfrey, Dr. Phil, 60 Minutes, Jay Leno, Jimmy Fallon, George Lopez, David Letterman, and providing, yes, the President of the United States, Barack Obama, with my autobiography, I'm still waiting to hear of such an investigation. Moreover, these judicial figures are charged with issuing just decisions that adversely affect our youth of tomorrow. There is an excess of a 60% dropout rate, if not 70% non-graduation rate for black males in Cuyahoga County. Unfortunately, 30 per 1,000 students fathered children during that period from the ages of 15 to 19, according to a report titled, and I quote, News Cleveland Birth Rate Falls by Vince, and his last name is G-R-Z-E-G-O-R-E-K. Moreover, at 19, these youth, most as ungraduated fathers, are required to pay back child support. Not having a diploma makes their employment perspectives next to impossible. Consequently, these young black males' driver's licenses are suspended, further lessening their chance of obtaining gainful employment. This puts them in front of these same crooked judges, because now these non-graduated black males are indicted and charged as convicted felons of being victims of child support law violations. How about charging these 50 judges? The judges that are depleting our tax base of revenues required to provide our children with books for an adequate education and their teachers with sustainable wages and benefits. How about charging them, who are instead shifting taxpayer revenues from the bail bond insurance carrier industry with crimes against humanity? Instead of these educationally victimized youth of tomorrow and fathers of these children, they're marched off to the penitentiary because of their felony conviction for non-child support payment. This opens up another assortment of problems and alternate money-making lifestyles, guaranteeing them multiple trips back to the penitentiary and in front of the same ruthless, corrupt judges. And I practically close. The remedy is an alternative legislation, such as community service, through the courts, that will allocate those earned wages to the child these children have fathered. Community services provide wages. Today they do that. We have community service through definitely the city clerk of courts, provide wages to pay for court costs. Community service provide wages for fines. Community service provide wages for court fees and penalties in other cases. Why not in this case? Community service can be an alternative to imprisoning these young black men and destroying their future and the children they fathered because of this felony record. Save our children from these lawless judicial racketeers. As again I mentioned, Bridget McCafferty. This is found in chapter 15, 30, and 44, excerpts which read, and I quote, "This allows them to make millions upon untold millions in the prison meat market slave trading system. During the past 5 years, I've directed 70 Extreme Men's Ministry in partnership with the Salvation Army. It is a recovery and reentry 12-step faith-based nonprofit volunteer life skills outreach support initiative. This grassroots community initiative targets at-risk offenders, felons, and substance abusers and ex-offenders and women in transitional housing." And I'd like to read chapter 84 on page 795 just for a moment to give you some insight as to what I decided to do. The best way I could describe my determination to voice my utter opposition to the state of Ohio and the Ohio Department of Insurance railroading me was to make it known to the world the manner and the species of corruption that exist in the state of Ohio, the city of Cleveland, and Cuyahoga County prior to the FBI affirmation of its existence some 5 years later. I was determined to become a one-man crusade if I had to, by acknowledging to the world on the highest mountaintops, regionally and coast to coast, and the nationwide, that this government was, in fact, a racketeering, corrupt county in crisis and despicably outright rotten to the core. As I conclude, please contact me at bailclassactionglobal.net or attend, if you couldn't attend today's discussion group, attend the many others that I'm having, and I'll be more than glad to be invited to your community to discuss the nature of the corruption and the racketeering and fixing court cases that the citizens of Cuyahoga County are confronted with, and that I expressly and truthfully explained and shared in my autobiography in your community, regionally, nationally, or internationally. You can contact me. So if you weren't able to attend today's, maybe other community-based grassroots discussion groups regarding alternative child support legislation because of these ill-conceived and unrealistic child support laws. And the issue that we're going to discuss is the call to action and the class action lawsuit regarding the 50 judges' fraudulent bail bond products provided to the citizens of Cuyahoga County and Cleveland, Ohio, representing, I want you to know this, millions, if not billions of dollars that you, the taxpayer, are funding to allow them to engage in this racketeering and corrupt pattern of behavior, organized criminal behavior. Billions of dollars stolen from the state of Ohio, details of which are on page 846, and I'll read it. In this class action, it's called a call to action. And I call it a call to action, class action lawsuit that you and the community, as well as others, are more than welcome to take part in. Call to action, class action lawsuit. Have you ever received bail bond services provided to you through a bail bond agency in Cuyahoga County, as I just mentioned, Chuck Brown's, or the city or county clerk of court from approximately 2002 to 2010? If so, you may be entitled to receive total or partial compensation against those named bail bond insurance providers, their agents and those agencies, and or their underwriter insurance carriers through participating in this class action lawsuit. This class action lawsuit will request that punitive and compensatory restitution and other damages be paid to everyone who has been adversely affected or denied justice or peddled these fraudulent bail bond products through agents such as Chuck Brown's regarding those products provided by the bail bond industry, particularly through the Justice Center. If you're interested and have been affected, please register at Bail Class Action at sbcglobal.net as a participant of this class action lawsuit. Information preferably required or entirely is needed in these 4 areas. The name of the person that posted the bond. That was 1. Number 2, the case number of the person released on that bond. And number 3, the bail bond agency and agent that posted that bond. And number 4, and more importantly, the judge who presided over that case. Since the book is now completed, my goal is to introduce into legislation Ralph's Law Insurance Reform Act. To enact and ensure Ralph's Law Insurance Reform Act is administered in conjunction with issues regarding attorneys practicing on the fringes and within the arena of the bail bond insurance industry, and to act with due diligence to ensure those reforms are enacted by the Ohio House of Representatives and the Ohio Department of Insurance that encompasses broad and sweeping legislative insurance industry reforms with teeth in them that verbalize and address concerns of anti-banking, antitrust, banking, racketeering, corruption, and organized enterprise monopolization, money laundering, and misappropriation of taxpayer funds within the bail bond insurance industry and the products that they provide. At this point, I'll conclude and we can get into the discussion.